Wolverine Revenge is so amazing, partly because Colossus starts tearing Wolverine apart. But this story is a non-canon story, meaning it is not in continuity. It's 5 issues long, we have 2 issues left. The next one comes out at the end of November, after that it's the end of December. But what this does is this picks up out in the Savage Land, and it's just quote unquote after Magneto. Now we will get some clarification for what that means because it's really cool, but this initially focuses on what's called the Zebra Children, and the Savage Land tying into it is actually kind of cool. We won't go super in-depth into this because it would just lead us sidetracking too much from what's going on in the story, but the Savage Land is actually the result of the Beyonders long before the events of Secret Wars, and that the Zebra Children were actually given to us in Marvel Comics by Jonathan Hickman during his Avengers the New Avengers run, leading up to Secret Wars 2015. So in essence, it all kind of ties together in a neat little interesting way. But Wolverine being down here in the Savage Land, down in Antarctica, where dinosaurs still roam and things like that, is just designed to kind of highlight the fact that he's been removed from society for quite some time. And this revelation actually comes by way of Nick Fury. Now, as you guys notice, this is the old school Nick Fury, not the newer Samuel Jackson Nick Fury character. So that's one of the first ways that you know this is out of continuity. But Nick Fury is one of these guys, at least the old school version, he was always on the lookout for the end of the world. And he was always the first one to realize what was going on. So if you go back and read a story like Secret Invasion, when the Skrulls were secretly taking over humanity, Nick Fury figured it out before anybody else did, right? It's actually a tie-in comic that gives us that revelation. But what ends up happening is Nick Fury reveals to Wolverine that there's actually been a massive calamity out there in the world, and there is no North America anymore, right? Millions of people are killed, billions still remain, but their days are numbered. And so what he does is he takes him back to what's effectively the helicarrier, and we pick up 8 hours after this initial meeting. And Nick Fury says, we're estimating that 100 million people are already dead, but I suppose we should be grateful. Asteroid M came in at an angle and detonated above Quebec. Bad for all of North America and most of Northern Europe and Asia, though it probably spared a couple billion lives in India and Southern Asia. But the fact remains, what we knew as the West probably has less than a week before it's gone for good, and those millions very quickly become billions. Now here's the thing, Asteroid M was initially an asteroid that was used by Magneto. It is important to note here that while I do refer to Asteroid M as a singular thing, it's actually been destroyed and rebuilt several times over the years. And in fact, in X-Men Volume 2, I don't remember exactly what issues it was. I want to say it was in the 40s, issues 40 something through 40 something. That basically Asteroid M was rebuilt as what was called Avalon, which I think is actually the coolest version of Asteroid M in Marvel. Suffice it to say here, it is Magneto's and historically been Magneto's base of operations. The fact that it crashed into Earth indicates Magneto had something to do with it, but we actually won't get a whole lot of information about it. Instead, what we're given here is Wolverine, Captain America, Bucky Barnes, and then a few members of S.H.I.E.L.D. And what Nick Fury reveals is that the S.H.I.E.L.D. fleet had 20 fully functional helicarriers in operation when Asteroid M blew up. There's only 3 left. That's the significance of the impact. More so than that, what he says is that this is not a military operation, it's effectively a heist, and the target is Tunguska Station, and that they're 100 miles out from it, and that if their intel is correct, it's the home of the only cold fusion seed reactor to ever exist. Now that's one of the things that makes the story cool, is that it's not some great big huge grandiose battle against some evil villain team for the purpose of like staving off the end of the world. The end of the world is effectively already here. What Nick Fury's trying to do is that by gaining this cold fusion reactor, it gives the ability to generate like power, electricity, heat to keep people alive. The issue with this is that this reactor is being guarded by the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, which as far as Nick Fury's intel seems to reveal, is currently being led by Mastermind. Now this is a big deal because for those of you guys who don't know who Mastermind is, Jason Wyngarde is one of the most dangerous mutants in the entirety of the Marvel Universe. The reason why is because while he doesn't really have telepathy and his powers certainly don't make him Omega level, right? They don't put him on par with some of the most powerful beings in existence. Jason Wyngarde has the ability to manipulate the 5 senses. So everything that you see, touch, hear, taste, and smell, he can control. So much so that he can actually make you believe you're in a place that you're not in. And there was a point in Marvel when his powers were amplified and they were used on on Jean Grey when she had the Phoenix Force. That's what actually kicked off the Dark Phoenix saga in Marvel Comics. And so because of this, just running headlong is a terrible idea. And so at this point, it's just kind of like, how in the world do they pull it off? And that's why Nick Fury says, on this whole front, they have no idea. All he says here is that he'll be running the mission from the sky, providing cover for Wolverine, Bucky Barnes, and Captain America, while Clay Quartermain, Maria Hill, and Dum Dum Dugan will be in command of their individual helicarrier. And so what's really cool here is that where Nick Fury is just kind of like, understand, we have to succeed here. If we don't, billions of people are going to die. Are you guys with me? And everybody signs up for it, right? But Wolverine's the one guy who's like, what else are we gonna do, right? And it kind of makes sense because Nick Fury doesn't come along and ask you to join a mission unless there's gonna be a kind of secondary protocol that other people don't know about. Now, we know that from like Fury's Secret War, when he enlisted superheroes to basically launch a campaign that was completely off the books and that nobody was supposed to know about. But Nick Fury doesn't answer the question. Instead, they go on their mission and then immediately Mastermind hijacks Clay Quartermain and then forces the helicarriers to crash into each other. And so what that does is it leads to like Wolverine, Bucky Barnes, the handful of S.H.I.E.L.D. agents they have with them to escape. The entire S.H.I.E.L.D. strike team is destroyed, right? So basically, they're all that's left. This was supposed to be a pretty significant campaign, and that's it. Not only that, once these other S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are there, they're taken out with a quickness through a combination of Sabertooth, Omega Red, and Deadpool. Now, of course, one of the things to know is that while Bucky Barnes and Captain America are incapacitated, they're not killed. And when Wolverine is confronted by these guys, they even go so far as to say, we wanted to kill you, but the reality is the boss says you have to live because we have to use you for some kind of a purpose or whatever it is. What ends up happening is Wolverine basically wakes up inside this kind of facility chained to a device with Captain America and Bucky chained as well, only for them to be told that bombs were placed in their chest. But here's where things get really, really cool. The Brotherhood capturing these guys is really more just about toying with them, right? Almost kind of having fun, their own thing. But Wolverine picks up the scent of someone that he didn't expect to be there, which turns out to be Colossus. Now, here's the thing. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, and strange times make for strange bedfellows. And that's really what's going on here. We'll kind of get the full totality of this as time goes on. But the reality here is that what ends up going on is Captain America and Bucky Barnes and Wolverine are all let loose. The idea being that they will effectively be sent back and they will tell everybody what it is that happened here. And the whole goal is to say, do not go there, right? Like stay away from there. That's their place. We have no business going there. We need to survive however it is that we need to survive. What's crazy about this is when they're allowed to leave, Deadpool, who has his hand on the trigger, detonates the bombs in both Captain America and Bucky Barnes, killing them both. Wolverine in turn goes to cut his bomb out and it detonates because when they had deposited the bomb in him, they put it inside his rib cage so that what would happen is that when it started to heal, it wouldn't actually spit the bomb out. Now, there were other precautions that were taken. For example, they temporarily neutralized his healing factor long enough to allow them to put the bomb in there in the first place, but they all expect Wolverine to be dead. And what's nuts about this is you actually get to see Wolverine heal from virtually nothing. Now, this is one of those instances in Marvel where even though it's out of continuity, it actually kind of fits in continuity. A good example of this was Civil War, right? When Wolverine was blown to smithereens and basically healed off panel and then returned. He should have been dead. Not only that, because Nick Fury is one of the guys who was killed, when Wolverine goes and kind of pays his respects to Captain America, to Bucky Barnes, the other S.H.I.E.L.D. soldiers who were killed, he comes across Nick Fury. And that's when he realizes the version that he saw on the helicarrier was a life model decoy. Now, while that might seem very kind of like hand-wavy of Marvel, that's actually the main MO of Nick Fury, and it has been since the original Sin story. The biggest reason why original Sin was so cool when it came to like Nick Fury's character is it revealed that we actually hadn't seen the real Nick Fury since the old Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comics, that for years, Nick Fury had actually just kind of been in hiding in a satellite, and like he would always send out life model decoys. So this fits in perfectly with the established continuity of his character. And so ultimately, Nick Fury is just kind of like, I mean, there really isn't anything to do here, right? The reality is we can't go there. We can't get that cold fusion seed reactor. There's not going to be any way to save people here. At the end of the day, all that's going to happen is you're going to see some temporary rise of like warlords and petty strongmen people vying for power and those individuals who will flock to those people with power in order to attain some measure of protection from whatever it is that may exist out there. But their days are numbered, and that clock is counting down due to any number of factors, right? Starvation, dehydration, the elements, they're all going to die. And so Nick Fury's like, I'm just gonna go find a hole, and I'm gonna grab my best gun and keep myself protected and drink myself into oblivion. I'll see you when I see it. And that's it, right? He just walks away. And so at that point, Wolverine realizes, okay, cool, like if the world's gonna end, we might as well settle all family business. So what he ends up doing is he leaves and he travels to the Dakotas. And then he ends up coming across Danny Moonstar. Now, Danny Moonstar is one of the coolest characters in Marvel that never gets enough respect. The cool thing about Danny is that she's more or less a telepath. She doesn't really get the title per se because she kind of creates like illusions based on the really emotional states, the biggest fears and desires of the people who are around her, but she does it subconsciously. So she doesn't like read minds, or at least historically didn't really read minds the way that Jean Grey did. Over the years, that's kind of changed, and Marvel's given her powers that are more in line with traditional telepathy. But the fact is, right, Wolverine is not here to see Danny Moonstar. Wolverine is here to see Forge. Now, Forge is basically Tony Stark, right? His mutant power gives him the ability to be every bit as capable as Iron Man. The kicker about this, though, is that what Wolverine wants is that he's going on a mission to effectively track down the Brotherhood, but he needs arms and armament to pull it off. And so he basically grabs Forge and has Forge take him to the place where Asteroid M touched down and crashed. And so initially there's a lot of ambiguity in terms of who they're talking about. And so where Wolverine says, I thought there'd be more, like debris or something else, the response of Forge is that something awful happened, and so they believe that it could not be avoided, that it was fate. The true believers of Magneto cleared this place of any remnants of Asteroid M, holy trinkets of their mutant prophet of doom. And when the question of Wolverine is asked, like, then how do you know he's here? The response of Forge is, I assume that the impact would have buried him deep enough that they would not have been able to find him. My scan of the area as we arrived confirmed that. He's beneath our very feet. And so Wolverine basically digs up the body of Magneto, and there really aren't any questions answered in terms of like what happened on Asteroid M that led to it crashing into Earth in the first place or anything like that. But ultimately, Wolverine takes the helmet of Magneto and then goes on his mission. And the first thing that he does is he tracks down Mastermind. Now, of course, once he finds him, we end up finding out that Mastermind had basically taken over this town that just doesn't have a name. And that because of the nature of his powers and the fact that he's effectively amplified his abilities, everybody in this town are just thralls that do whatever it is that he tells them to do. But when Wolverine shows up here, Mastermind doesn't know that it's Logan. He expects him to be dead by all standards of measurement. But you also end up learning that Colossus had actually given everybody the boot, right? He had kicked out Deadpool, Omega Red, Mastermind, the whole 9 yards, because he just simply didn't need them anymore, right? That they were quote unquote beneath him. But the fact that this person knows about that gives Mastermind pause for concern. And so he tries to use his powers to take over this guy's mind, to read his memories and so on and so forth, only for Wolverine to reveal himself having the helmet of Magneto, which blocks the powers of Mastermind. And then of course, Wolverine literally cuts his head off. And so after that, Wolverine takes the head of Mastermind directly back to Forge, and then literally they hack into his brain like some kind of computer. And what Forge says is he says, it looks like Colossus is where you thought he would be, and Omega Red is pretty close. Deadpool shows up in multiple locations. It seems he was moving between all of them, probably because nobody wanted him. Whatever the reason, I'd assume that what we have on him is less reliable. As far as Sabertooth goes, he's right here, and it looks like he's made a home in the desert. Which one are you going to go after first? And the response of Wolverine is old business before new business. What about the other thing that I asked you for? Can you make it? And the response of Forge is, I did it while you were gone. And so what you do is you pick up a week later when Wolverine finally tracks down Sabertooth. Now, what's really cool about this is that because the battles between Wolverine and Sabertooth are so historical, they basically usually go the same way, right? The two of them kind of talk for a minute, a fight breaks out, they basically, slaughter each other, they heal, and then they go their separate ways. That's not what happens here. That instead, there is some banter back and forth where basically Sabertooth is like, look, man, I expected you to be alive. The reality here is it would take a lot more than a bomb in my chest to kill me. And I figured that like you would probably survive as well. And it was only a matter of time before you came for me. And that's fine. So let's get this done and over with. And the two of them start fighting each other. Now, again, because they both have healing factors, these fights go on for a pretty substantial amount of time. And Sabertooth does his fair share of talking trash, right? And kind of getting the upper hand on Wolverine and saying like, I'm gonna kill you here and now, and everything that you have, everything that's important to you is going to be mine, right? Like I'm gonna take your life, I'm gonna take your motorcycle, any love interest you have is gonna be mine, I'm gonna take my time with them, that kind of stuff. And then at that point, because Wolverine has basically allowed Sabertooth to kind of tear him up and slash through and all that kind of stuff, Wolverine gets a hit in, and then Sabertooth realizes he's not healing. And that's where Wolverine said, it's because of the device, basically the light that's on the motorcycle, that is actually a neutralizer built into the headlamp, and it neutralized the powers of Sabertooth. Now, it's not the first time that something like this has been done in Marvel Comics. More often than not, when it comes to neutralizing healing factors, it only ever comes from one of two ways: a carbonadium sword or some kind of carbonadium weapon, which really more disrupts a healing factor, almost like an EMP, temporarily taking power down, temporarily taking out a healing factor. But then there's the Muramasa blade. Now, the Muramasa blade is more unique to Wolverine than anything else, but that is a sword explicitly designed to shut down a healing factor permanently. And it's the only real tried and true way to kill Wolverine, because the sword, as far as I'm aware, can also cut through Wolverine's adamantium. I'm not going to swear by that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. The fact is, though, that because Sabertooth isn't healing, that he really is losing here. And in fact, he goes for like one final shot. You see the two of them fight, then you never actually see what happens. It just kind of goes off panel where Sabertooth is killed. Now, a lot of that is because this is a 5-issue series, and so Jonathan Hickman kind of has to fast track through the story. But honestly, I kind of think it works for what they're doing, because you jump to Wolverine when he's traveling to what's effectively a vessel, right? This kind of ship. And this ship is essentially gun running between what would have formerly been known as like Europe and the United States. And so because these guys are still trying to maintain some measure of income, I don't really know why that kind of thing matters in this day and age, they basically tell everybody, right, either you have your papers to give you permission to be here, or you have gold. If you have neither, get out of here, because paper money doesn't have any value here whatsoever. Now, of course, Wolverine shows up, and when they kind of challenge him, he's like, look, I'm getting on that boat, right? I'll kill all of you if I have to in order to do it, but I'm getting on that boat. If you want to survive and you want to be on the boat and get to your destination, then you're just going to let me be, right? And so, of course, Wolverine gets on the boat, and then he basically travels directly to where he needs to be. And in essence, this location is effectively the Soviet Union. Now, that's what's really interesting about this, is because Wolverine comes across what is essentially a nuclear reactor, and it kind of works perfectly given the context, right? Like Magneto crashing into Earth and EMP basically taking out all power across the globe. It puts you in this situation where you run on whatever energy sources are out there, and nuclear power seems to work. The problem here is that it actually doesn't, and we'll figure out why here in a minute. But Wolverine ends up coming across Omega Red, and when that happens, of course, a fight between the two of them sort of breaks out. Wolverine doesn't take him very seriously, and in fact, he kills him like that. He takes his claws and just cuts through Omega Red's carbonadium tentacles, and then just like chokes him to death and breaks his neck using his own cords. He strings him up as a kind of warning to anybody around there, don't come here. And when he gets to the top of this reactor, he comes across Deadpool. Now, it's kind of cool, right? Because when the two of them start talking, Deadpool is not like the nonsensical character that you're used to seeing now. This version of Deadpool is really more like the late 1990s Joe Kelly version of Deadpool, right? Where there is some kind of dark humor there, but he still maintains a lot of his character traits from like his original creation by Rob Liefeld. And so because of this, Deadpool just sort of sits down with Wolverine and is like, I kind of feel really bad about what it is that happened here, man. Like, I feel bad about doing what it was that I did to you. I mean, the reality here is like, I just needed some kind of allies, and that was essentially it. And there wasn't really a whole lot that I could do. I mean, there was a lot that he could do. He could just not be a dick, but like, you know, Deadpool being Deadpool. But Wolverine asks like, what's going on with the reactor? And Deadpool says like, I don't know, right? Bad wiring, Russian engineering. Maybe it was just a stupid plan anyway. After they installed it, it was leaking radiation every week or so. But now she's got an upset tummy and is belching fallout every 20 minutes. And so literally it just kind of explodes like a geyser. And so Deadpool's just sort of there musing over all the things that he's done. Not just the fact that he hit Wolverine the way that he did, took out Captain America, so on and so forth, and regretting the choice, realizing he made the wrong choice by killing off those guys, that he should have sided with the superheroes, that ultimately, like, he just intends to jump into this reactor and end himself, right? But of course, Wolverine's like, look, man, I can't do that, right? I can't just sit there and let let you do this, right? It's not going to happen. And so he pulls him out. Deadpool's ecstatic over the fact that like maybe they can have some kind of a team up or something along those lines. But at the end of the day, Wolverine's just kind of like, okay, here's a question that I have for you. Do you really think someone who's done all the things that we've done, all the people we've hurt, the governments we've toppled, things like that they can ever really be forgiven? And the response of Deadpool is, I mean, I guess I do believe that, right? I mean, you're forgiving me. And Wolverine's like, I don't believe that we can be forgiven, and just like pushes Deadpool into this reactor where Deadpool succumbs to all the radiation. And so a week later, you pick up with Wolverine digging a grave. And what this does is it focuses on the fact that Wolverine is now at the farm of Colossus. And this is really, really cool because Colossus comes down there and starts talking to him. Now, of course, the question of Wolverine is like, is it just me or have you gotten bigger? And like Colossus is like, nope, like through the years, we have all just gotten smaller. Now, this is more of like a metaphorical thing than anything else, right? Kind of talking about the nature of quote unquote superheroes, that by essentially eliminating the gap between heroes and villains by way of the anti-hero, that heroes have almost kind of become villains. So there's really no differentiation between traditional heroes and traditional villains, because sometimes villains do good things, sometimes heroes do bad things. So it's very easy to blur the lines between the two. But Wolverine's just kind of like, it's nice here, right? It's peaceful, a good place for things to end one way or another. And so Colossus just sort of says like, go home, right? I have no wish for things to end like this. And Wolverine's like, I don't have a home anymore. And that's because of you. Is there somebody in the house? And the response of Colossus, yes. And so that's where Wolverine simply says, well, then I'll make sure to mark your grave so they'll know where to find you. Because Colossus has done all of this for his family. Now, we don't know the full extent, right? We don't know if like Mikhail Rasputin never became a powered villain. We don't know if Ilyana Rasputin is the person he's talking about and like she never became magic, right? So like this incredibly powerful magic wielder. We never knew any of those things. Instead, it's just like a person there. So I'd be curious to see who this person actually is. And so Colossus, I don't know, maybe almost like philosophically is like, could you have ever imagined that it would come to this, right? That we as friends, once upon a time with a fastball special and everything, that it would come down to the two of us fighting each other this way. And the response of Wolverine, he says, I'll tell you the truth, pal. All I can imagine now is you 6 feet under. Now, here's one of the coolest things about Colossus fighting Wolverine. Number one, he tears him apart, and you'll see what I'm talking about here in a minute. But the other part of this is that a lot of people seem to have this misconception about the nature of Colossus' organic metal skin, that he has what's called osmium skin. Basically, it is a kind of organic metal, but it's not indestructible. He can withstand incredibly high temperatures and incredibly low temperatures. But on the scale of like durable metals that exist out there, his is pretty far down the list. And so that's why Wolverine with his adamantium claws can actually cut through Colossus' organic skin. And so as they're fighting each other, there's almost this kind of philosophical discussion between the two, right? Where Wolverine's like, why did you do it, right? The others, that's not really a surprise, right? Even Wade, but you were the best of us. You're supposed to be uncorruptible, the guy that always makes the right choice. That's this honorable person, because that's the nature of Colossus, right? Colossus is a very, very honorable man that believes in always doing right by people. But what he says here is incredibly profound. Sometimes you have to pick a side, even allies that you despise, because it's what's best for your family. And at the end of the day, that's really what matters most, right? Barring any kind of extreme nefarious issues with your family, right? Family is family. Blood is arguably thicker than water. Now, of course, that's not a universal rule. And Wolverine says, I was your family. And that's where Colossus is, no, you were never my family. You were my friend. And that was not enough. And so he literally rips the arm off of Wolverine, which is nuts. It's one of the coolest things to see him do. I mean, the gore of it all is pretty extreme, but he's like, I am sorry that it ended this way. And the response of Wolverine, yeah, me too. And he puts his fist under Colossus' head and pops his claws, killing him on the spot. And so at that point, he just grabs his arm, reattaches it, and it just heals. Then he picks up the body of Colossus, buries it, and then goes to the home of Colossus to do whatever it is that he has to do next. Likely destroy whoever it was that Colossus was close to. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this to an end. Like I said, the next video comes out at the end of November, then the final one comes out at the end of December. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.